Some of you may be aware General Haimovich is the immediate past Chief Commander of the Israel Air Defense Forces. So if you've heard of the Iron Dome system, if you've heard of the Arrow system, if you've heard of the David Sling system, this is the individual who was in charge of the deployment of those systems and I believe bringing them operational. I want to take a step back and talk a little bit about his operational experience, because it's one thing to be the commander of the air defense forces in certain places in the world. It's another thing to be the commander of the air defense forces in the State of Israel because of the immediacy of the threats. So I'd like you just to explain to this learned audience some of the threats. Maybe you can go Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, and then afterwards you can broaden it out, because I know that you're very strategically minded.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's really my pleasure to share with you this morning, as it was yesterday, my experience, my life experience, mostly about leadership, but always Benjamin tried to challenge me and ask me some more than leadership, and it's great because I think you are great guys to take my ideas or my experience or my knowledge, and I will be more than happy to share it with you. So I prefer not talk about my job or my challenges as the Air Defense Forces commander in Israel, and I'll take you for a short tour with the challenges that Israel faced in the last 10, 15 years, and then you will decide by yourself what does it mean to be the Israeli Air Defense Forces commander. So we'll take only the last 15 years. It's not so much, but it's enough to emphasize and understand what I'm talking about and what we'll talk about it later. Israel is a state, and I'm not familiar from other states all over the world. You will correct me if I'm wrong, hopefully not. But we are the only state all over the world that in less than 15 years, to be more precise, since 2006, July 2006, I don't know if anybody here knows what happened in Israel in July 2006. It was the second Lebanon war. So we'll take that milestone from 2006 to 2020. More than 20,000, this is the number, I'm not wrong, 20,000 rockets, missiles, and mortars, you name it, were launched to the State of Israel from multi-front, multi-directionals. North from Lebanon and Syria by Hezbollah, Syria, and Iranian militias groups. From Hamas, from Gaza in the south, from ISIS, Sinai, Egypt, and more. More than 20,000 rockets. I'm sure that you cannot compare it for any other states that you are familiar, traveled, or living in. We are talking a lot of conflicts, crises, wars. Just to describe what does it mean, conflict, war, or crisis in Israel. And I'll do it very briefly, very shortly, and take three main events. I mentioned the Second Lebanon War, more than 30 days of daily conflict, war, around 4,000 rockets. I will jump to 2011, the Pillar of Defense, only 7 days, 1,500 rockets. Less than 3 years after, 2014, when I was the Active Defense Wing Commander, 51 days, around 5,000 rockets, 75% of the Israeli civilian under daily attacks. We are sitting in a very nice room, very nice environment and weather outside. Try to take yourself back on the time to this environment that I'm sharing with you. So what does it mean to be the Israeli Air Defense Forces commander? Be responsible for all that stuff. For a national perspective, protect your state, protect your people. This is your mission. To minimize the damage from lower tier mortar rockets up to lower-tier, long-range missiles from Iran, and at the same time, the ABTs, the air briefing targets, UAVs, jets, choppers, etc. During my position as the air defense commander, we intercepted, for example, 5 Iranians and Syrians UAVs that flew to the state of Israel, and 1 Sukhoi 24 Syrian jet that's across the border. So it's not only the active, what we call the active, the TBM, tactical ballistic missiles, and rockets. So it's a variety, big spectrum of threats, and we will talk about the dynamic, the environment that we are facing with. But this is the meaning of being the Air Defense Forces commander in Israel in that time. If somebody wants to be in this position, maybe 2 or 3 years from today it will be relevant, but that's the way that we are doing the professional, operational business or missions in very intensity environment in Israel, talking about my previous job and our very complicated situation.
I want to ask you one more question about that, and then we'll come to the dynamic of leadership so people can see how you've implemented your practical challenges into not only leading, but building the next generation of leaders. That's so very relevant. Well, I probably shouldn't say this, but while we were on the tour in Israel, the cadets were paddling in the Sea of Galilee on one particular morning, and a projectile was fired up right over it. There was a drone coming in from Syria, and we saw, right, and we saw the detonation right over where we were. So thank you for keeping us safe, even as we swam in.
So especially for you.
A wonderful live demonstration. I want to talk a little bit about the qualitative military edge, just for a moment. So you talked about 2006 rockets from Lebanon fired by Hezbollah, 2012 rockets from Gaza fired by Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and again 2014. But they're now in possession of GPS technology that is changing the game in terms of the accuracy of these and really increasing the ferocity of the cat and mouse race that's at play. Can you talk a bit about that, and what are they trying to hit?
It's much complicated than it looks, because we are in a race between us and the other sides. And unfortunately, there are sides. It means more than one side. They are all leading and monitoring by Iran, but there are much more than sides, and we need to respect our enemies. I think this is rule number 1 as the military leaders. We need to respect our enemies. They are doing the same process as us. They are learning. They are doing the AARs exactly as we are doing after every event, every conflict. And in this race, we need always to be one step before our enemies. If not, we will lose the next conflict. And I can see, and I saw it before, but I say it today, very, very clear the way that our enemies learning exactly and try to learn where our gaps, how to challenge our systems, our weapons, our concept, our doctrine. The question is focused on one topic, very important, very critical, but this is not the only one. I'll give you another one, for example. I saw in the last 10 years that I mentioned before, they started and they launched single targets, single rockets and missiles. And we saw, thanks to the process that I'll talk about it later on, how they are improving the way that they are working. And I'll jump 10 years ahead. If we started 10 years ago with one single targets, rockets, mortars, missiles, you name it, less than 10 years after, the biggest salvo, it means simultaneously a lot of targets on the air, more than 60. Try to think and put yourself in the BMC, in the Battle Management Command, sitting, and you can see fly to your face a package with 60 simultaneously missiles. And you need, as a commander, as a soldier, to take a decision and deal simultaneously with 60 rockets that's going to hit or attack your mission. Another issue was the question that I was asked. They saw, and I will not repeat again all the numbers, but they saw that it's not enough to bring thousands of missiles and rockets to the state of Israel, because the question of damage, it was non-effective. So they understood it's not enough to bring a big amount of numbers to the state of Israel and create almost zero damage. And they started strategic decision to move, to develop precise missiles with a huge warhead. Now try to imagine that this target missile rocket with a 100 kilo and more warhead will be precise in less than 10 meters, going to attack, for example, this building, not by mistake. And they are still thanks God and thanks to our forces, they are still in this process and didn't reach the goal that they want to, because we attack, delay, prevent, and more them to achieve all that capabilities. But that will change dramatically the situation, and we need to prepare ourselves. We don't want that all the thousands rockets that Hezbollah, Hamas, and the other groups holding today will be precise stuff. And then each target have a specific address where to go, where to attack. It will be a game changer to our concept, strategy, and the state of Israel.
And so these are some of the threats that are faced by yourself and those in your team. And that's why it's so very vital to be able to create leadership and decision-making and anticipation and reaction, all in the same individual. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the Iron Dome system, just as one example, which is effectively the ability to shoot one bullet down with another bullet, is actually a system that could be fully automated, but it keeps the man in the loop. You've told me about that. And I think that that really expresses why you've had to diligently build leadership within the forces that you command. So can you just tell us a little bit, turning to the slide, what it is that you're going to share with us today?
I think it's part of our concept, but it's part of our culture in the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, the Israel Air Forces, and of course the Air Defense Forces. We are working and using state-of-the-art technology, really. You cannot find better than that systems. It's kind of a science fiction that you will take a very high velocity of a target and will intercept or engage with a missile from the ground. It's really, 10 years ago, it was science fiction just to think about it, how does it work. And all of them have a full automatic mode. I'll tell you a secret, we are not working with that mode, because we trust our people much more than the system. It looks very strange. But the system, and it doesn't matter how smart is the system, it's only a system. It's a formula, computer, 1 + 1 = 2. But in our life, in our dynamic environment and threats, sometimes 1 + 1 = 3. And only men online in the loop can make it. Because system, you can operate and say, okay, you will take the decision after 5 seconds, or 7, you name it. But what's happened if a millisecond, minute in our time, it's like a cigarette break in your time. A second after, the target changed the direction and become relevant. But the system took the decision because you operated to 5 seconds. Only men, smart, sharp, well-educated, well-trained, can take online decision. Talking about online, I want to bring you inside the decision maker place. What does it mean online? Missile from Gaza to one of our big cities in the south part of Israel, which is called Ashkelon. Only 10 miles from Gaza. They are launching a lot rockets from Gaza to that city. Also to Tel Aviv and others. But let's take Ashkelon, 10 miles. The time flight from launching till eating, try to guess. It's early in the morning. I'll help you. I'll help you. 15 seconds.
1-5.
It's a lot of time, right? Right. But 15 seconds, it's from launching to eating. The time frame to engage and take the decision, it's only 5 seconds. So each one of you will count yourself 5 seconds. This is the reaction time that you need to understand, decide, and take the decision. Of course, far away targets, you have much more time. Much more time in our mission. It's up to 30 seconds, no more. So in 30 seconds, and I'm talking for the young future leaders, 30 seconds, 5 seconds to 30 seconds, you don't have time. Call to your boss, call to your chief, call to your mentor, call you name it. You need to take decision by yourself. This is the way that we are working. And I'm proud that our people, commanders, fighters, soldiers, they are much more smarter than the systems. Of course, the system help them, support them, bringing them the tools to take the right and the correct decision. But it's integrated with the man in the loop. It's not only a system decision. Hopefully it will answer to your question.
Absolutely. So you always keep the women and men within the system making those decisions.
Absolutely.
You've obviously imbued them with this ability to make those decisions. We've got about 15 minutes, 20 minutes to talk through how you did that. Give us a little bit of an overview of how you make sure that we've got the right people in the right place at the right time.
So first of all, we are here to talk about leadership. This is the title or the topic of the very important symposium here. And talking about leadership, and you can see only an example of definitions. You open the books and essays, you will find dozens of definitions. It doesn't mean that they are correct or incorrect definitions. I think that leadership is much more than definition. It's mentality skills, performance, ideas, and in front of my short briefing about leadership, if I may, don't forget to bring your personality, your values, your way to your leadership position and time. Don't follow the others because the others are doing like that. Always there is a huge space and place for your personality, values, and on-belief way to your leadership. And I'll try in the next few minutes share with you my life experience about leadership with a few examples, and I'm sure that now you have a better understanding about the environment and the situation in Israel, so how you build your skills, you build your leadership to be effective and efficient in this kind of environment. But talking about leadership, it's not a general discussion. I think we need, first of all, to understand the situation and the environment that we are part of that. Because leadership, it's not automatic mode, and we mentioned the automatic mode. I dislike that mode. It's not reading the book, bring the definition, plug it, play, and run. we need to understand, if we want to be relevant, effective, and efficient leaders, we need to understand excellent the situation, the environment. And you are going to lead in a very ambitious environment. The idea that we are living in a very dynamic environment. It wasn't like that when I was young captain or young lieutenant. You will jump to this world. This world changing a lot. Focus on the security and the defense perspective. We have the superpowers. We have radical states. They are here. They will stay with us. But the transformation that we are part of this process, and it's an ongoing process, we are moving from big wars to conflicts all over the world, not only in the Middle East. Less states against states, more states against organizations, terror and guerrilla organizations. From global conflicts to local conflicts with a global effect. It's a huge difference. All of you need to think about that environment that you are going to act and work in this environment. So it's all in change, moving. If you are looking for the stability, you are in the incorrect job. Incorrect job, looking for another job. You need to react in ongoing change. You need to take a decision in unfamiliar expertise because it's all changing. Very dynamic environment. This is the area, this is the situation, this is the region that you are going to work. And it doesn't matter if it's the Middle East, Asia, Africa, you name it. All the regions have the same ideas. So once you will understand and describe for yourself the meaning of the environment, then we can talk about leadership and about the leadership skills that will be relevant dealing with that environment. Because talking about leadership out of the book with no context to the situation, it will be less relevant or non-relevant, you name it. And I prefer to be effective and efficient, and I believe this is the right and the correct way, talking about leadership. First of all, understand the platform, the base, the situation, the environment, and then let's talk who is the leader that we want dealing with that environment.
So can you give us some examples of the leadership skills, the specifics that are needed today? And also, I'd like you to speak about your own standard of self-assessment that you constantly looked back to once you made the decision that you wanted to be the commander of the Air Defense Forces when you were a young battalion commander.
Yeah, actually there are 2 or 3 different questions, but they are all well connected. Who are the leader that we want that will deal with this very complicated and very challenged situation that we are talking about? First of all, it should be flex enough to update it too. Keep his mind open and ready for changes. We'll talk in a while about changes, because we like to talk about changes, but let's see if we are really doing the changes as leaders. We need to build and bring ourselves in a constant circle to learn, to think, and take a decision. This is all about leadership, decision making. And if we are talking about a very complicated, dynamic environment, I'm asking you, looking for the changes. Build the mechanism with yourself and your troops, and ask yourself always, where are the changes? Behind each one of the change, you will find a chance. But it's not so simple, because each one of the chances have risks, opportunities. In a perfect world, only opportunities, but we are not in a perfect world. That's the life. So if you can choose your job, you can not choose your life. That's the life. Come together. But you need to understand it, to analyze it, and then work. And we are working, and we are taking decisions. I used a lot these 3 self-test questions. Don't wait for your boss or your commander that he will tell you and give you a feedback. A, great, A plus, A minus. You will promote to whatever you want. Be your own boss. I cannot tell you every week, every 2 weeks. You know exactly when and where. But ask yourself 3 questions. Am I achieving my goals? The first question. Because we are all dedicated, focusing to achieve goals. This is all about military and leaders. We are focusing, achieving targets, missions, goals. The second question that you need to ask yourself, watching back on the way, what was correct, what was incorrect, how can I do it better? And last but not least, I told you before, remember, bring your personality, values, your own way. Ask yourself about the way that you passed or took. Am I believe in my way? All these 3 questions will help you to define yourself and not waiting for your boss or your command if you are in the correct way in your leadership, in your decision making. And you asked me about my own experience. So
Assessments.
And here is a few examples. For my own experience, I used it when I was a commander. And you can take it or leave it or bring in other tools, that's fine, but just think about it. Think about the tools that you want to build and bring to yourself, to your troops, dealing in this environment. First of all, learning forum. I remember myself, took my TRADOC commander and asked him to build a few learning teams. And I told him, don't tell me stories. First of all, I don't have time. Second, and much more important, it's less effective. I want that the learning teams will bring me changes. They will focus on doctrine, technology, systems, enemies, bring me changes. And then, it's not enough, okay? I understand where are the changes. So what? What we are doing with that changes? We build doctrine teams that they checked and compare between the currently concept and doctrine to the changes. And believe me, changed a lot. Because if you will not change, you will create a gap, a gap, a gap, and you will not fill the gap with concept, with doctrine, with new methods. You will prepare yourself to the previous conflict and not for the future conflict. You will not reach, you will not find your enemies because they are not there, they are changed. Another tool how to train and educate your people. The schools, and we are in school, so I apologize in advance for the staff, the faculty. They don't like to change the syllabus and the programs. I remember my school commander when I was the Defense Forces commander. He always told me about his challenges, change the program. I told him, okay, great. I'm very happy. So what? Do you want to keep your syllabus? And then, right after they will graduate, you go to the field, and they will find what? Something new. That's a problem. So, sorry about the faculty that's sitting there.
That's the end of our session, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. How to build effective program to your people. How to build the exercises and the training. They should be relevant, not a general, realistic scenarios that they will feed exactly the changes that your learning team brought, and they will practice the new doctrine. Otherwise, they will find it the first time on the field. You don't want it. And always, I told to my exercise planners, bring realistic scenarios, but always bring surprises to the operators. Why? From my experience, I never saw a conflict, a crisis, a military I'm talking about, yeah, with zero surprises. And last example, a method that I used a lot, which is called assessment. I built a few assessment teams, operational systems, it means weapons, missiles, etc., threat, personal. A lot of changes from ourselves. Just compare the generation that we are part of that. The Y, the Z, we cannot ignore them. We need to understand what does it mean. Because each one of that pillars bring something new to the field. And if we will not understand, we will not prepare ourselves, we will be less effective in the field. So, 4 or 5 tools or methods that I'm sharing with you, that you can use it tomorrow in your job, in your position. This was my experience. I found it very effective, so that's the reason why I'm sharing it with you.
So we've got time for just 2 more quick questions before we open it to the audience.
The time is running.
Yeah, it is, but that's such is the nature of this. Time is a cruel master, as you know, with your 5 seconds and so forth. I want to ask you, can you just give us, I'd like to ask you to do this briefly, because I want to give you a chance to engage with this audience. I think they'd be very, very blessed to do that, and we'd be fortunate to learn from them by way of their questions as well. Give us a real-time example from the Middle East that shows how to read a situation with accuracy and how to implement leadership. Briefly, I'm sorry if it's a heavy question, and then we'll move on to the last one.
It will take time.
Okay.
It will be briefly, but it will take time, because it's really excellent question. And we can talk a lot about it, but I'll try to do it really very, very brief, just to give you an idea how to take complicated currently situation and have a better understanding from stories and try to make a link and then have a better understanding and not just reading news in the media or the newspaper, because all the idea is not to know, it's to understand. And always, we need to find where is the starting point. It could be a week ago, or 10 years ago, or 15 years ago. Depends how complicated or what the event or the situation or the story that we are talking about. Most of the stories have a long line back, so we need to find that beginning point to have a better understanding of what we are dealing with. And I'm sure that, for example, in the Middle East, you're all familiar with Iran, ISIS, Hezbollah, civil war in Syria, the Arab war, the Sunni, the Shia, really big mess. Big mess, believe me. I'm living there, it's big mess. But we need to understand that puzzle. That puzzle, it's a picture with many, many pieces. Each one of the pieces, it's very important. By the self, it's less important. The idea is bring the pieces and build one clear picture. This is the idea in complicated situation, and Middle East is a great example of complicated situation. And if I try to bring all that stories, titles, and links together, and try to show you a way how to understand a complicated situation through a lot of question remarks, because the question remarks will lead you for a better understanding. You will not take it as a story from the CNN or the Fox. You need to understand why. And if you will understand why, you can be relevant dealing with that environment. Because just reading a story, it's good in your free time. And talking about the Middle East, there are three main pillars that they are all about. And if you will understand them, we understand all the stories that they will be part of that pillars. First of all, we are talking about the civil war in Syria, more than 8 years. So it started as an initial issue, but very fast, it's become a global issue. We found one day, really out of the blue, with zero alert, October 2015, thousands of Russian troops in Syria. They are still there. So, you know, it's a break news, an intel message. Okay. Did you ask yourself ever why President Putin decided to deploy thousands of Russian troops to Syria? It means that you are still asking yourself. I'll help you. Russia left the podium as a superpower around 15 years ago. President Putin decided, strategic decision, to stand again as a superpower in the world. And Syria, he decided, will be a gate to the world. And for that time, we found him against US policy or ideas in Turkey, in Kurds, Iran, and other places. So it's not about Syria. It's about the way that he took Syria as a great opportunity to bring himself to the center of the stage next to the United States of America as a superpower. And right after, we found Iran and Hezbollah part of his coalition. Very strange coalition. Remember, local conflict affect global. Great example. Great example. It's not about Syria. And I'll do it very fast. Sorry.
I apologize.
I too. No. Second pillar, Iran. Every second break news, Iran in the media. So what we're talking about Iran? First of all, the most radical state, I would say, terror state all over the world. But it's not only that. We need to understand the way, the ideas, the concept that they are working. And then we can deal with them. We need to go 10 years back. We can go further, but let's start in 2010. What's happened there? Do you know? A lot of things in the Middle East. December 2010. Later on, we called it the Arab Spring. Tunisia revolution. Less than 2 years from that point, December 10, 2 revolutions in Egypt, 2 in Yemen, started the civil war in Syria, Iraq, of course, it's ongoing, and more. It means the Arab world will not be the same as it was before 2010. Iran understood that, and they decided to lead the Arab world. So if we want to understand what is leading today the Iranian regime and leaders today, we need to go back 10 years. They decided to lead the Muslims, the Arab world, because from that point, the Arab world divided for 2 parts, the Shia and the Sunni. And they decided to lead, first of all, the Shia, and then the rest of the Arab world. And they decided to use a lot of proxies in the area, kind of a front ends. Look at the locations. Imagine a map in front of you. The Houthis in Yemen, in the south, the militia in Iraq, Hezbollah, ISIS, Lebanon, Syria, and look at that end, control all the Middle East. This is the idea. So talking about that, you can talk about, okay, each one of the proxies and describe them, but we need to understand the global picture about Iran. Nevertheless, Iran running, plus minus the same time that I'm talking 10, 15 years ago, 2 ambitious programs. And they didn't stop for a second. First of all, long-range missile program. They want to reach 5,000-kilometer missiles. Why? Israel, it's only 1,500. Today they have 2,000-kilometer capabilities of missiles. Why they need 5,000? Why? Again, take the map, put the 5,000 kilometer, we find most of Europe, all of the US bases, west and east, and here we go. But it's not enough. They have a second ambitious program, the nuclear program. Why? That radical regime need a nuclear program. How many Arab states holding today a nuclear capabilities? How many? Help me, I'm counting. 0. Remember, 10 years ago, they decided to lead the Arab war. So they understood that that tool will help them in the Arab world, but in the rest of the world. I'm jumping to the last pillar. We have time, or?
We have to be very quick, because I must take questions from this audience. But please do summarize. I think there would be a benefit
It
from
will
it.
be very quick, yeah. So the last one is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So the civil war in Syria, Iran, and the Israeli conflict, those are the 3 pillars that's leading the understanding about the situation. And then, okay, how we can be effective dealing with that. A lot of ups and downs in this conflict. I'll not talk about it. A lot of opportunities, a lot of risks. But again, to understand, go back and jump now to understand the situation. So we are dealing or conflict with the Palestinians more than 100 years. I'll not take you back 100 years. Only 13 years. What happened? Summer 2007. Hamas took the control in Gaza. From that point, there is no one Palestinian voice. There is no one Palestinian authority. And we are still talking about the Palestinian as a one body. It is a mistake for understanding, because there is no one Palestinian body. Hamas in Gaza and the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, they are 2 different authorities. Believe me, they are enemies or they like each other the same way they like Israel. it means they are dislike each other.
I'm going to move to the floor for the questions.
Morning, sir. C3C Laraka. So my question is, can you elaborate on the decision-making process you went through when you had to retaliate against groups like Hamas, but they would base like their operations like near civilian centers like hospitals?
A great question, really, a great question. I think it emphasized, and I'll take your question and bring it in a bigger perspective. It emphasized the asymmetrical warfare. This is part of the complicated situation that we are dealing with organization and not states. States against states, they are keeping same rules, values. But we are talking about organizations. We are not playing with the same values. I mentioned before the 20,000 rockets. They want to hit schools, neighborhoods, shopping centers, hospitals, etc. The Hamas and the Hezbollah using backyard schools as the launcher sites. Basically, the underground floors in hospitals, they are for parking lots, right? In Shifa, this is the biggest hospital in Gaza, they are using the underground floor for the Hamas leaders' bunkers. Normally, mosques or synagogue, chapels, they are holy places to people to come in. In Gaza, it's a big storage for missiles and rockets. Do you know why? Because they know that we will not attack that places. This is a great example to emphasize the asymmetrical warfare. And we will do whatever we can to prevent any innocent, even though they are using that facilities to attack our people, our state. So we need to take a brave decision. And again, I told you before, keep your values, keep your personality. Maybe you will lose that engagement next minute, but we will win much more than that. We will reach, believe me, that terrorist groups. Not in the mosque, not in the hospital, not in the school. An hour later, they know it. But this is the way. We cannot lose our values, our way. We don't want to be like the terror and the guerrilla groups. That will keep us different than the other. This is a huge challenge. Remember, states dealing with non-state organizations, terror and guerrilla organizations.
Thank you.
Difficult life.
Thank you. Do we have time for one last question? One more question we can take if it's brief. Yes, sir. There's a gentleman at the front here, the second row.
Could you talk a little bit more about some of the challenges you faced in implementing a system as comprehensive as the Iron Dome? Maybe as far as like training individuals to use a system. It seems like such a shift in paradigm for the Israeli defense. I just would like to know some of the challenges that you faced.
And unfortunately, we only have 1 minute for that, General. So these questions, you see, people want to engage, so we'll be around as well afterwards, definitely. Please.
I'll tell you, and I'll take the Iron Dome, because you asked as an example. Iron Dome personally is since 2011, okay? April 7th, that was the first time. It was Thursday, 6 p.m., 6 and 15 minutes. That was the exact time. I remember like it was yesterday. For that time, we are talking about less than 10 years. Except the name, Iron Dome, the rest of the system, different. Different. We took as advantage all that crisis and conflict and changed a lot the system to be relevant because the enemies changed the same. Dealing with salvos, dealing with the multidirectional threats, dealing with more capacity, simultaneously targets. working well integrated with David Sling and Arrow. We don't want to stand alone. We started as a standalone. Today, it's a full integrated environment. So it affects much more than just only the system. We need to take the chances from bad events like crisis and conflicts and push it down to the concept, to the doctrine, to the systems, and updated too. And its affect not only the Air Force, it affect all the Israel Defense Forces, because it's a way to think about the mix between offensive capabilities and defense capabilities. They are working together, because today we understand that offensive capabilities cannot exist without defense capabilities. We didn't think it before. The defense capabilities bring the leaders the buffer time and zone to take a rational decision about the offensive, maneuvering, and others. So they're well coordinated. So it is working much bigger than just focus on the system itself.
Thank you very much. I just want to, before I turn it back to you, I have to say something because it's on behalf of all of us and on behalf of the people of Israel. We are members of the Jewish faith in the Jewish state, and many of us were ingathered after the horrors of the Holocaust. And the individuals, the aviators who flew in the defense of all that is virtuous in this world were wearing the uniforms that you will one day be wearing. And there is a deep and well-founded connection between our country and your country. We thank you. It's not the only occasion you did the same thing in the Yom Kippur War, where you came to our aid, where we were very much embattled. And I just want you to know that as you heard from the General, we face endless challenges, but if you give the Jewish people half a chance in this world, they will go out and build you an Israel. And from the soils of Israel spring leaders such as the General. That is the result of an ingathering of a people and to its land, and the reconciliation of a land with its people. And so we are extremely grateful to you, and you made a right decision when you decided to take a bet on the future of the Jewish people and the Jewish state. With that, I thank you, General Haimovich.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, Post Office Box 360, Stamford, Connecticut 06904. Or you can call the JBS Pledge Line at 833-MY-JBS-TV. That's 833-695-2788. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. We thank you for your kind support.